a sheet talk, Angela Duckworth, a sheet talk. It's all about looking at results, putting things into practice, reassessing them, and then finding out what works and what doesn't work. And that is our continual effort that we have to do within a school. We try something, if it doesn't work, guess what? We'll try something else. And that is just what we need to continue to do throughout the school, but also within classrooms. If we continue to do more of the same without looking at data and looking at which students are learning and which aren't, we're not going to go anywhere. And we do a disservice to our students when we're not doing the best we can for them. Okay, next question, next slide. All right, Lori?
Okay, so a short road trip from last year. This is probably especially useful for those 15 or so of you that are new to our school. Go ahead to. So last year, the focus of the PD work, unwrapping standards, so also known as power standards. We spent time creating progression and proficiency skills, what is guaranteed for the unit, and a lot of time on planning and calendaring as well, picking the dates for the different assessments. And then this summer, we were able to continue to have an option to work in PLCs. Basically, the PLC members came in and decided what their action plan was, breaking down the responsibilities. Notice that the work was aligned to standards, and literally hundreds of products were created that could then be placed into the PLC folders and utilized by the same department or other departments. Go ahead and go to the next one. So we had over 50% of the faculty come in this summer and continue the work. And so as we put the products into the folders, we've got vertical alignment, we've got an opportunity for cross-curricular. Another awesome thing about Google Folders is we can access the material, these products, from any device that we have. And it honors the work. It's good for the students, it's good for us individually and collectively to be able to see what's going on. We had things that came up the first summer PD that were then utilized in the second and the third and so on. So it's been really exciting to see all the work, hundreds of hours. And as a former teacher of many years, we talk all the time about, you know, gosh, how are we going to digest all this on our plate? Well, this was the way you guys picked what you needed to do and did it, and kudos to you. There was some amazing stuff that came out of this, as well as these products can then be useful for times like accreditation, which is our next slide.
Go to the next slide, please. Okay, now did you just want to review this?
I'll just take a minute. As you know, Advanced Ed, that's our accreditation process that occurred on 2016. During that time, we were expected to complete 3 improvement priorities and to establish a plan to accomplish them. That report was actually submitted this past May, and in June we received notification that our progress that we've made, the plan that we submitted, has also been accepted. What this means to us is that your work in the PLCs that you've done this past summer, as well as in previous groundwork in the last 2 years, has moved us forward to another area, and that is your assessment data that you are starting to collect and analyze. All of that information is extremely crucial for us to see full circle of the work that's been done. I want to congratulate you on your efforts, and I strongly, strongly encourage you to make sure that everything you do this year that's moving you towards identifying an appropriate intervention, understand that that is done through the assessments that you create, also the assessments that you provide or administer, and then you take the time to analyze them. So any PD that's related to assessment, collection, and analysis is going to be so, so important. Thank you for your time. That's it.
Accreditation it's a big process that I think was made pretty painless as we worked through it, because the data that we sent in was received and accepted for and showing what we were supposed to be doing. Then they gave us feedback on that, and that information that we took was information that we continue to build upon, and therefore they were pleased with the work that we had done. Okay, next one. All right, let me have Mr. Monson. Could you please come up as PLC leader if your team is helping you or if you're the one speaking for your team. So this is Math 1, and they did a lot of great work this summer, and he's going to share some of that. Go me!
I was wondering what it felt like to hold this. Now I know. To improve my popularity, or at least maintain it, I will be brief. So.
Slide.
Oh, this is, you're not supposed to be able to read it. It's just, we started, well, actually this process we've been doing it for 3 years. And what we do is we always look at the core that the district's broken down by quarters, and we go and talk through which topics, which concepts are we going to teach, which are we going to ignore, and which are just taught or part of the ones we're already going to naturally teach. Then we try to calendar it. Put it up to our calendar and decide how many days for each item. Here we just match it up to our book, and over here we put in our CFAs once we build those. We had some built last year, but we always change our mind and build them anew. But it's just a process of looking at the core and together deciding what should be taught and what really should be, so that we have time to really get what should be done. And that's it.
Thank you. Jerry?
Thank you. Can't read anything there. Okay. So we go through a similar process to everybody else. This is kind of how we decided to break down each unit as we're planning out the year. And so some of the things that we had difficulties with and some of the successes that we had was with world civilizations, it's a very, very broad topic. And so there's very big concepts that lots of different things fit into. And so you can talk about a lot of different things and get off on different tangents and within the same concept. So it's a struggle to figure out how we're going to make sure that we have some guaranteed curriculum in there. And so what we do, there's 3 things that drive the way that we decide what we're going to cover and what we're not going to cover. And that's obviously the core, the granite benchmarks, and then also the curriculum maps from the district. And so those 3 things kind of drive the way that we decide what's going to be important and what's not going to be important. But within there's a lot of leeway because each teacher, especially in the history department, we have subjects that we are a little more, we know a lot more about, and then there's some that you just never cover even when you were in college. So some people have areas that they're experts in, and some people aren't as familiar with that. But within the larger concepts, we can cover the same ideas. So, for example, we have up here early civilizations. There's lots of really early civilizations that you can cover, Egypt and Indus River Valley and all these different ones, and teachers within there can choose which ones they want to cover while making sure that they cover the objective that we came up with. One of the things that we do in order to help us make sure that there are some very strict guaranteed curriculum that helped us a lot this year was going through vocabulary and talking about, okay, what terms do they have to know? And so that helped to narrow some things down so that we know we're going to make sure that we cover certain things within those civilizations, but the way that we teach that or what civilizations we cover are up to the teacher. So we've really had a really great time this summer in the World Civilizations Department coming up with these things. One other thing that I just wanted to point out, we've been working on proficiency scales. It's still a work in progress, but we're coming up with those things and figuring out how to come up with ways to push the students. So, for example, like coming up with hypotheticals and stuff like that for higher level learning, and then as we're getting into the lower levels, things that are just basic stuff, what can they come up with? So that was what we did this summer.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. A lot of great work was done, and I appreciate your efforts and taking the time to come in and do it. So many, I think we had 70 different teachers who came in and participated on that. A part of that is exactly what they shared. It's looking at the benchmarks. It's looking at the core. When we say research, what are we doing as far as research? We can research practices. We can use data to inform us of those practices. But some of this has already been done for us. Now we just use that information and teach with that information so that we can find out how we can better help our students. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, I'm gonna step back a little bit. I'm gonna just step back a little bit. I'm gonna ask this question: why? Why do you do what you do? Okay, Bradley Moon. Why do you teach? Why do you do what you do?
I like being with kids, and I feel honestly it's a way to give back.
Okay, giving back, being with kids, great. Candace Green, why do you do what you do?
I like kids, yeah, I like people. I like being artistic, being creative, and coming up with new ways of teaching.
Okay, good. Ms. Clooney, why do you do what you do?
I want the kids to learn and fit into society and keep their lives better.
Okay. We have a why, correct? And do we know what that why is? We know what the what is, the how. Do we know what that why is? And perhaps we do. I'm going to show a little clip here. We saw this, I think, three years ago, Simon Sinek, 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I want to just go over this so we can reflect as to why. Why do we do this?
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You ready to buy a computer from me? All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products. And nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
Okay, in the interest of time, can you go to the next slide? Okay, take a few minutes with your elbow partner and ask the question, what is your why as a teacher? And what is the why for our kids? So take a few minutes and talk, and then we'll report back. let's come ahead. Let's come back. All right, anybody want to share? Anybody want to share? Tom Roxon, thank you. What is your why as a teacher?
I am really passionate about kids understanding the topography of Azerbaijan.
Keep expanding.
My why as a teacher, I like helping kids. I like building kids and teaching kids and giving them an opportunity to have a better life than they'd have if I wasn't there. So that's my governing why that I try to remember most days.
Okay, good, thank you. Somebody else? Yes.
My why is seriously an underhanded way of doing what I believe in. I believe deep down we all love the earth. I believe that's just a core part of being human is loving the home we have. Whether we treat it well or not, that's an individual choice. But if I could take 240-ish kids and make them love it a little better, they'll take better care of it just because they understand it better. They walk away with a little more than they came in with. We all benefit.
Good, thank you.
I love learning, and I want to inspire the kids to want to learn as well.
Great. Anybody else? Yes.
To paraphrase Piaget, I think education is the only way to save the world. So I do it to do that. Just make the world a better place. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, you know what? We have 3,200 kids that are coming every day here. Do we know what that why is as a teacher? What is the why for our kids?
Your girlfriend's here, Sam.
Yes.
We kind of talked about this. I think a lot of our whys as teachers tend to be abstract. You know, we want to save the world. There's not much you can concretely, easily attach to that. Whereas a lot of the kids' whys tend to be concrete, which kind of makes sense developmentally. So it might be to graduate or to go to college, or in some cases just to have a stable environment, you know? And while we may want our students to want to be here to learn, that's an abstraction that they'll eventually arrive in.
Okay, good. We look at that. We look at the Granger, the growth. We look at the graduation. Kids. Now, he would say that that's going to be the outcome. Okay? There's that outcome to graduation. That's why a kid would come here as a freshman and finish out as a sophomore. That's what that outcome is going to be. Ms. Nybar, what is the why for our kids?
I think, well, I get a chance to really talk to them about that and when I'm teaching. And honestly, it really is that very tangible stuff. They, like just the other day when we were having a conversation about what they wanted and why they want that. And they said, because I want to be able to get back to my mom and dad. I want to help them when I get out, and I want to make them proud. They want to make their parents proud. They want to help their parents out. They want to have a better life. Some of them are talking about wanting kids, and they want to be able to provide something bigger than what they had. So I mean, this is just pretty standard stuff that we probably had when we were younger. It's not anything way out of the ordinary. They just want to be accepted and loved and find some success and be able to provide a home. That's what they want.
Okay.
That's their why.
And that kind of ties in maybe perhaps what our why is. And then the how and the what. You know, how do we help them get there? What is our role as far as that goes? Okay, this year's focus. I'm just going to go right. Our vision continues to be the same as we will provide rigorous and meaningful learning that leads to college and career readiness for all students. Okay? So, this aspect of what we continue to do to help kids with their why. We have a why, they have a why. We know the what and the how. I would say we know the what and the how. It's that issue of getting them to understand what the why and how it ties into this. Goal, become a data-driven school that is committed to using all types of data to better understand strengths and weaknesses related to power standards, adjust instruction and improve teaching and learning, plan for collecting long-term, medium-term, and short-term data on student performance. We will continue to build on that why and be able to help kids reach graduation when we know what we have to do and how to do it to help these students. And that's part of it. It's the idea is, you know, so many of you have been around education for so long, and you say, well, you know what? We're kind of, we recycle a lot of the things that happen. But I want to say that, well, these aren't novel ideas, but I think they're core values. I think they're core things that as a school we need to continue to work towards. We've been talking about data for a while now. Are we getting better at looking at it to inform our instruction? Okay, that becomes a big question. Are we looking at it any differently this year than we did 4 years ago? And if we're not looking at it any differently this year than we did 4 years ago, can we expect any different? We can't expect any different if we don't continue to look at what the present is and how to use that information to inform us to become better in our instruction as a school. We use it for behavior, and I would say within the school, behavior is improved. Why? Because of a look at that, looking at the data. Same thing with academics. When we see those improvements, which we've seen improvements in the school, why is that? PLC's looking at the data. Because if we continue to teach like we were teaching 4 years ago without informing ourselves on what works and what we're willing to try, you know, if we don't do that, we probably aren't going to get any better, and our results aren't going to be any better. We're disservicing the kids. Okay.
So I get to talk about how we're going to do this year. So in the beginning, we talked about all the continuation of the work that was done last summer, where we looked at our power standards, we identified them, we had rough standards and so forth, and we continue to do that in the summer. With this initiative this year, we want to continue that work with you teachers, but we want to focus on the things that we can actually control, and that's what happens in our classroom, and that's the effect that the instruction is having. So our how for this year coming up is going to be to focus on our common formative assessments and actually have the data in front of us to see if we're actually making growth from one assessment to the next. So right now, and there's a variety of different levels of how common assessments are used in the school, but for the most part, what I think is wonderful about Granger High School is that I hear assessments being utilized more than I've heard in some of the other schools. I've had experience working at the district level, traveling around. And I'm actually very pleased with what I've seen and heard, how assessments are being used. One of the things that this year we're going to focus on is how those common assessments are actually aligned to the learning objectives, particularly the learning objectives that you have picked as a PLC. So are they having an effect? Are they aligned? And how are kids responding to the teaching that's happening during the year as a result of that? I have a book that you're going to see several times, and probably, if you have it, I'm going to be referencing this book quite a bit. If anything, this is probably one of the best guides when it comes to data and instruction overall, and this has been widely used in our district for many years to talk about changes. The person who wrote this book taught in a school whose demographic is very similar to ours. The kid is driven by data by Paul, Brambrick, and Santoyo. Salt Lake School District, this is their Bible, pretty much. They only go through this in data meetings. But you're going to hear a lot of information that is coming from this. The North Star schools that he worked with in this example in that book, these schools match our kids. They match our demographic, and they were able to move them. And and he says it single-handedly, the one way they were able to do it is by controlling the things they had power over. And that was the assessment. It was the instruction in the classroom, and keeping that information in front of teachers all the time so that they're making decisions that actually move their students. A lot of times, we spend time just looking at our data, but what we're going to challenge our teachers to do this year is actually do something with it. And a lot of you, I know I'm preaching to the priority, are in that mode. But a focus this year is to focus just solely on what the data is. Like I said, right now, we are focused on what our students are learning. This whole year, it's going to be about that. Our whole year is going to be spent on focusing on what they actually know. So we want to look at those test results as they're coming in. So there's going to be some aligning that's going to have to happen within your PLCs to be able to get this information in a timely manner so that we can actually adapt our instruction to meet the needs of our students this year. Okay, so I want you guys to find the handout that you were given this morning as you walked in. So wait for that. It's on the back. So this is what Lori and we call this a logic model. It's an at-a-glance view of what our objectives and goals are for the year. I was going to ask that you guys focus on those first two columns. I'm going to give you about a minute or so to read over that. So you're looking over the first two columns of this handout. And these are our instructional goals. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, wrap up your final thoughts on that. Okay, so what we have done on this particular slide, I've just highlighted the key concepts that we will be focusing on overall. So as a collaborative team of teachers, what we were hoping to see are these particular changes. For example, as a PLC, to see a drive towards more decision-making collaboratively as a whole to improve teaching and learning. As a school and as leadership committees and so forth, we want to make sure that we're giving you very clear expectations about what it is that we're expecting to come out of these data meetings. So using data and also providing the type of protocols and the opportunity to actually dive into it. So our professional development from now on will have a data focus where you will have an opportunity to dive into the information in the data as it's coming in. Also, Dr. Dunn talked about this last time, but we've created the role of the data manager for PLCs, particularly in the core areas. Their responsibility is to collect data and provide that data for our teachers. Elective teachers, something similar is coming, so it also will involve you as well. But having that data in a timely fashion so that we're able to utilize it to change instruction in our classroom. And all of this, again, aligned with our standards. Are we teaching what we need to cover? Is it having an effect on our students? And is it changing? And are they getting the information in a timely fashion? So is it changing what they're learning? Okay, so far, the PLC process has 6 steps. We've covered preparing and planning last year. So we've gotten hopefully, all the planning out of the way in terms of unwrapping our standards, going through our proficiency scales, and actually calendaring what we're going to cover. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start moving into that different phase of instructing and what effect is it having. Are we looking at our assessments? What is it telling us? Are changes being made based on the information that is coming? And then that scary phase at the very end, and I'm going to tell you, even as a teacher, I was petrified of the adapt phase. Because what happens there is that as I'm teaching and I assess my kids and I realize, you know what? I didn't cover that very well. That didn't go very well. I'm going to have to reteach this. What do we do at that point? We have to face that because if the information is not getting at the end of the line, it needs to be addressed. And we're going to talk about the collaborative ways as a team
you can actually create some, you can make some changes happen at the secondary level. And then reflect on that process. Okay, one thing I wanted to point out, and I just said it, it's meaningless when you have standards if you don't assess them. If you don't know if they're getting at the end of the line. And this book will give us a lot of protocols about what we can do as a school to move our students. Okay, so if you flip that handout over, on the other side, this is a model. With PLCs, there's two types of meetings.